And let's see, can I see the chat? Things I should have done ahead of time. I don't think I can actually see the chat. So if I maybe it'll show me chat bubbles. Anyway, if you want to raise your hand, I should be able to see that. Please feel free to unmute. Any way you can ask a question is totally good.
And we'll monitor the chat for you, Kenny.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I am just sort of like, why is there no chat window? But it's probably user error on my part. So my name, oh, go ahead.
So yes, we have a good extra.
Oh, there we go. Thanks. it's not a meeting if we don't have a mute problem. So it's official now. My name is Kendra Little, and I work a lot with relational OLTP databases, mostly SQL Server, but increasingly Postgres. I do now have some blog posts on Postgres, and they actually are getting readership. So I have blogged about SQL Server for a very long time, and I'll be talking about technical blogging today. And I still work with databases and love them. These days, I am a database reliability engineer, which is kind of like a hybrid role of database administrator growing into more of an SRE type role. So really focusing on reliability. And these days, more than ever, I submit a lot of code contributions. AI developments have made it more possible than ever for me to participate and ship my own changes in PRs. I can, set up feature flags, follow all sorts of automation to tune queries much more easily by myself now. And so really, I'm becoming more and more of a software developer these days. But databases are what I have always been fascinated by for whatever reason, and are what I love, and are mostly what I've written about. I have on my blog, I was very surprised to learn, I don't know, within the last 6 months. At one point, I was kind of working on like dusting off my blog, as we'll talk about. And I realized I had more than 500 posts on it, like just on kendralittle.com, which used to be littlekendra.com, but now I finally got the domain name kendralittle.com. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of posts. These are not all high quality posts, nor do they have to be, but it is 500 posts. So I've done a lot of blogging, and not all of it has been good, but I am really, really glad that I've done it. And I think it is still worth doing, even in this AI age, maybe even more worth doing than it ever has been, honestly. But it's a controversial topic, I think, and we'll kind of talk about that. So this is the sections we're going to run through today. And what I'm showing you here is actually something that is on my website. So when I was building this talk, like, I love writing talks, but the way I like to organize things, I like to say that my life is just a series of falling in love with different text files. I am just a person who I've always loved outlining things. I've loved, like, when I write talks, I basically kind of create a manifest for the talk, and I'm like, move things around between different sections. And the way I've always wanted to write talks and presentations, and the way that I personally often write blog posts, is through these outlinings. I want to create a text file. I live in a world now where my blog is driven by text files. All of these posts and what you have here are markdown files, right? Here is my blog. It's in a GitHub repo. It's a static site. So what blog posts actually are on the back end is just these markdown files that the static site renders as blog posts. And for this talk, I was like, I really just want to write an outline and have it transformed into something like slides. And I kind of vibe coded up a solution to that. So you can actually see these slides if you go to kendralittle.com/presentations. I just right now have one presentation up, so it auto redirects to this one here. So I am now kind of considering presentations to be blog content, and I think that's totally fair game. And you can really make content in a technical blog whatever you want it to be. So why is it important, and why do I think it's more important than ever? Right now, things are fairly chaotic in tech hiring, and that's not completely new. But we really have kind of a problem situation that's getting worse and worse. So I know folks who've gotten laid off. I think most everyone does, because layoffs are more and more common. And it, like we go through phases with layoffs in tech companies. And right now we're at a point where companies doing layoffs is just becoming more and more of sort of an accepted ritual. There's times where a company doing layoffs is seen as a big like trouble thing for the company, but now there's sort of things in the market where they're like, oh, they're actually, this is just sort of a natural adjustment, and it's becoming more of a cyclical thing. There's a lot of churn, and folks I know who've been laid off, some really good folks, have a hard time finding jobs often. Like, it is not that unusual for people who have quality work experience and quality skills to struggle finding a job, particularly, and I know more about the US market because I'm in the US, but it can be tough to land a job these days. On the hiring side, it's not fantastic either. So because right now, like if you open a job, I am not on a data engineering team, for example, but I know people who've opened jobs for data engineering, and they're like, yeah, after 12 hours, we had 5,000 resumes and the stack keeps getting bigger. There's a weird sort of AI arms, I don't know if it's an arms race, I probably shouldn't use that term, but there's like this tension where more and more people are using AI to build resumes. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. AI can help you make a better resume, in my opinion, than is easy to write yourself. Like, I think that's true. But also AI screening for candidates and review. Like, so, but we've just got this massive sort of pileup of everyone wanting in and everyone being able to put sort of their best foot forward, or you can invent a best foot to put forward, right? On the hiring side, how do you know how many of these resumes are real or accurate, right? Like, how do you know? We have candidates who are using, AI earpieces and AI plugins to get through coding challenges, which I honestly think coding challenges in interviews are often stupid, but like there's this competing thing of like, not everyone's operating in good faith. And honestly, this is on both fronts. There are plenty of examples of people applying for a job and then finding out it wasn't even a real job at all. They just wanted their data, or they were just trying to get them to buy something, or it was a scam of some sort. So we've got problems in hiring right now, and I'm not sure what the solution is, but it's not great for the candidates. And honestly, I don't think it's great for the hiring companies either. It's problematic. And I think in the current situation, it does actually make technical blogging something that can really help candidates. It can really help identify, is that resume true or not? Now, we'll talk about, okay, really, can it, right? Like, so that's a hypothesis on my part. Now, I do want to address just how much time do you have and do you want to invest in this at the beginning? And I think this is the anti-hustle guide to technical blogging, because I think in order to be like successful at this, you can't make it a part-time job, or most people can't.
They even build more for more people.
Oh, sorry, you said? Oh, okay, I thought it was a question. I think it was an accidental unmute.
I disabled it.
Thanks. But most people don't have time for a secondary job. And I'm at the Women in Tech group. For women in particular, it is still true that women carry a lot of taking care of tasks around the home. Now, this imbalance is something that I think we should fix, but like, you can't fix that. Like, we can't fix that automatically. We still want to make progress. So how do we do this without saying you can't participate in your family life, or you have to work this extra time? This needs to fit into like cracks of time that you take back from work. Often work does sort of encroach into our personal time, depending on what our jobs are. Finding ways where you can do this in sort of smaller bursts and sort of fit it in. Finding ways that I can do this where, oh, if I have an idea, I can just quickly use my phone to capture that idea. Finding ways to sort of fit this in makes it more doable, because it can't be something that I need to be perfect. So things I try to remind myself of when I'm writing posts are, it's fine if it's imperfect. It's fine if it's not comprehensive. Being clear about the scope of a post of here's what I'm talking about and here's what I know. And like if there's something I don't know or that isn't clear, it's okay to just say that in the post, right? So that will kind of help me time box it a little bit of trying to keep it simpler and understanding like this is not a place where I'm going to do everything. Just try to take a smaller bite when you can, do best effort. And like that actually, like what that shows in posts, being able to scope things, being able to be clear about here's what I've tested, here's what I'm hypothesizing, here's what I don't know, right? That sort of clarity is actually something that is very useful to people who might be reviewing that work or might have at some point, I think soon we're going to have AIs reviewing all of this stuff and AIs more regularly being like, can I see more information about the candidates? But that is a very increasingly useful work skill, especially if you are working with AI. I do think, and this is something I've gone back and forth on for a while, and this is not like a morality thing. I'm not talking really about too much of the ethics of using AI or environmental concerns in this talk. I do think on technical blogs, for the most part, your writing should be your own writing, and you should not AI generate the writing. Like, I don't mean all the time, and I don't mean this for like morality value. And there are times where I will have it generate plenty of code and I'll just say, hey, I had AI help me generate this code. So I'm I try to be clear about what it's done in the content of the blog itself. The reason that I think your writing should be your writing at this point is because that is the job skill people are reviewing for. And if your technical content smells like AI, it may be flagged as AI slop, essentially. You do not, like if your technical content smells like AI slop, I use that term lovingly, then that somewhat defeats the purpose of what I'm talking about here. So, and I don't mean that it can't help you. I do use it to like discuss things a lot. I'll often be like, hey, will you look at this post that I wrote and can you just like give me not like a straw man argument against it, but what are opposite points of view that people might have for really valid reasons, right? Like that can actually, especially if I'm struggling with a topic, that kind of talking about something and having the AI help me. Like sometimes I'll be like, I want to write about this thing, but I don't really know what my point is. Can you chat with me and interview with me to help me distill like what is, I need help figuring out what is the interesting thing I want to convey here. So I'll often chat with it before I start writing, but having it actually do the writing itself, I think is not actually that valuable because it is very detectable too. So I don't know if this will always be the case, but I do think at this point your writing is really valuable, especially for these purposes of building up materials online or collateral online that can help you build your career. This is a completely made up graph. So this graph is there's a few SVGs in here that I essentially told the AI, here's what I want to graph. And in some cases I gave it data. In this one, this is totally made up. This is just my sense of this from things that are going on. But like a technical blog itself is not going to land you a role by itself. It can help a lot though. So this is really supplementary material that helps establish you as not just a resume in the pile. It helps establish you, much like GitHub code contributions, right? It's not just a technical blog. GitHub code, or public code contributions rather, can also help do this. It's a visible way that you're sort of sharing work with the internet. Networking and personal recommendations are still, I think, especially the more senior the role is, network and personal recommendations are still the most influential thing in getting a role. Whether good or bad, I have very mixed feelings about this because I do think it can like help build monocultures, which is not what we want. Like I think diverse cultures are better in technology and produce better code and are more fun to work with. But effectively right now, I do still think when people at a company have a job opening and someone has a strong recommendation, that is listened to more and more, because how much of this resume fodder is real? How much of it is accurate, right? There's this great sort of unknown there, and that's kind of the current state. Having code contributions, which can, by the way, code contributions don't all have to be actual like algorithms. They can be document help, reorganizing things. They can be simpler code contributions, and that can still be very good. But having these sort of outside of your resume as supplementary material can really help people understand that you are a person and that you are not a fake person, right? Because this is actually a thing. Like, there's a lot of fake people applying for jobs. Not all of them are nation states. I think some of them are nation states, but it's a wild world out there. So when whenever I'm on a hiring loop and someone's resume or LinkedIn lists their blog or website, I look at their blog or website. Like, I always do. And I think a lot of folks do on the interviewing side too. And when I'm looking at someone's site or looking at their GitHub repo, I'm just kind of interested in, like, can I sort of tell what are the types of things that they had problems with, and how do they explain it? I think another thing that can be very, very visible on these sites is discretion. And that can be very, very tricky to navigate. But that is something I think naturally, like, even without thinking about it, people notice, like, what is the tone here? And are you talking trash about your coworkers? It happens on people's blogs. And a technical blog should be very different than a personal blog, especially for that reason, because this is part of your career. Now, I'm sure there are exceptions to this rule. And we'll talk a little bit about some posts that I've done where I'm like, I did get a little more feelingy there than I usually do. And I do posts also about issues that are not pure technical issues. It's okay to be controversial. It's okay to post about diversity and inclusion. It's okay to post about cultural things, but I think you do want to very specifically avoid trash talking your employer and your coworkers on your blog, because big red flags like that will get noticed, and I think really can tank your career, at least in terms of people who are looking at your blog. But I think this question of, do you write like a human, more and more relevant, because it does matter if you write like a human, because you interact a lot with humans, both in Teams and in Slack and in prompting. So writing itself, more and more of a skill in terms of that. The other thing I am sort of constantly telling myself about technical blogging, so it shouldn't have to take up a ton of time. There will be spurts where I'll just be really into writing and I'll do more and more of it in the time I already allocate for kind of personal time, because I enjoy writing. But a lot of times I need to fit it into the cracks. But also, a blog is a thing that for almost everyone, unless you're Pien Aldave or Brent Ozar, you will probably constantly quit your blog and restart it. And that is normal. There's this feeling of like, oh, I'm constantly failing at blogging. You're not constantly failing at blogging. Blogging is a thing that you constantly restart. It is one of those things that I think for most of us, some of us are just more in a place to do this at some times than others. One of my favorite just quotes in general is Samuel Beckett's "Try again, fail better." And I feel like that applies to blogging quite a lot. So here's a graph. This is based on real data. It's an SVG that I generated. I looked at my posts, which all of them are sort of dated. So if we look at my actual posts, all of these have metadata in them. I use Hugo for my blogging site. This is actually easier than ever to do as a static website, and it can be a completely free way to host a blog. I did this before I used AI code generation as well. It's not super complex coding and there's a lot of plugins, but each post has, metadata about the date at the top of it. So I analyzed those and had it look at times where I quit posting for a long time, like 180 days or more. So the earlier days of my blog, I often quit my blog and came back for long times. I do still quit for long times and come back. They're just shorter than 180 days. But I've still built up 500 posts, right? I've still built up a lot of posts over time. And you don't need to do 500 posts to make it valuable. You need to do a lot less than 500 posts. They've just accrued a lot for me because I've had a lot of, I've worked as like a developer evangelist where like blogging was kind of part of it and it was helpful, right? But this is just my personal blog, not stuff I posted on like brentozar.com or the Redgate site. But I quit my blog a lot. I restart my blog a lot. Another thing I think about often is just how much do I share online? And how much is safe to share online? Women, it's harder for women and for marginalized people to publish a lot of personal details online because the risks are greater. So risks can be there for everyone online, right? There are trolls who will go after you. There are people who will dox you. There's horrible things that have happened to lots and lots of people. But a lot of people, particularly marginalized folks, particularly women, are kind of hesitant about having online presences because it can be really creepy. I do think you can choose how much you reveal and still be successful. Like, for example, if you don't want to share your last name or photo, I think you can still be successful at this. I do think that cross-linking to things like other people's posts, cross-linking to GitHub contributions, cross-linking to more sites still establishes validity for that persona. Like, we all have an online persona, even if we're being very genuine. It's just sort of the thing that's created. I think if you want to have a more limited online persona for privacy reasons, you can. And there's interesting folks even in the SQL Server community who've done this. So for example, Fill Factor, there's a bunch of posts written under the name Fill Factor. There's no person named Fill Factor. And in fact, the person behind this eventually sort of became public and said, hey, my name is Andrew, here's my job. He's since passed away. He's a great person who was part of the community, but like he did sort of show there is room for that. And people actually really liked with and engaged with the Fill Factor persona. Obviously, you have to be kind of careful here with personas and you don't want to be sort of fake or trolly. But if you do want more of an online character who is not a troll and is similar to what who you want to represent you, who is very much kind of your work persona, I think there are ways that you can do that. There is always a risk that someone's going to be able to dox you, though. And I think just being public online, even just having a LinkedIn account, there is always a risk that people will be able to dig up your information for various parts of the internet and the bad things can happen. And I think safety is always something to think about, right? Is someone going to show up outside your house? Is a real actual concern just with being a person with a public presence on the internet, unfortunately. So I have a pretty public persona. I use my real name. I have lots of videos with me in them. And it's been okay. I feel very, very lucky and very, very happy about that I've been lucky. But there's real risks out there to think about, and I don't want to downplay those as part of this talk. So this can be helpful in careers. I do encourage thinking about where is the boundary on what you want to set public and evaluating that sort of specifically. So what is this public tech identity or persona? Well, a certain amount of real life stories absolutely come into technical blogging. And I think that's actually very valuable, even though we have to think about this sort of discretion aspect to it. And when you look at real people's blogs, they're quirky, right? Because the reality is we solve a lot of similar problems, but a lot of things are implementation details. So if you look like at the early days of my blog, you can kind of tell a lot about what types of DBA tasks I was doing. I was writing a lot of SQL agent jobs. I was figuring out how to write a lot of scripts that explore metadata in SQL Server DMVs. Like that's a lot of what I was thinking about at the time. And you can kind of see some of the quirks of things I was thinking about in there. Whether we were thinking, is it partitioning something we want to include or not, various things like that. You don't have to write, like particularly bland posts or particularly unique posts. I would say, really, just write stuff that is useful to you, right? And it will just be a little bit quirky, and that's fine and that's good. When people are looking at your site, and people absolutely still do look at sites a lot, like internet traffic is way down. This is very sort of publicly known. Internet traffic way down to sites like Stack Overflow. LLMs more and more are answering a lot of coding questions. I still have a lot of human traffic to my site, and I still have a lot of people looking at my about page to be like, who is this lady? Like, who is this person? When people visit a site, they do want to know who the person is. So they want some sort of persona information. Again, you can kind of choose how you present that persona and how much you reveal about them, but it's still very much like things do. And interesting things stick with people over time. The posts that stick with people are not necessarily the posts that I remember writing. I can see which posts are popular from like site traffic, but sometimes if I'm at a conference, someone will say, hey, you know that post that you wrote about, and then it'll be this very specific thing. It'll be like some detail about replication or about change tracking or like some very specific thing. And I'll be like, that really helped me. Thank you so much. I couldn't find that. And like, I will have no idea that I wrote it often. And it's that kind of post that like you wouldn't think to write unless you hit a problem. It's the kind of post that you wouldn't think to generate something about unless you hit a problem. So I think those real life examples that show up in technical blogs are incredibly valuable. Some of the ones I think about now are actually like, I'm thinking of starting a series of things Claude tells, and I'm not quite sure how to frame it yet, but it's like things the AI tells me that make me feel like I'm still valuable as a human technologist. Things where I'm sort of like, oh, that's quaint that you think that, Claude. They still need me because that's totally not right, Claude. Because it will be very, very wrong about a lot of things. And I'm actually thinking of starting a post on like where the AI is wrong and like why it's interesting that it's wrong about that. My standard for what is a good blogging year is I think 10 posts a year is a great year for blogging. Like if I can post 10 posts in a year, that is a gold star year. Other years will happen. That's fine too. But like, it's great to have gold star years that are 10 posts or more. And I had that earlier slide that was like, here's all the times I've quit blogging. The thing I try to refocus myself on and try to remind myself of are, here's all the years you did a great job blogging. You do not have to do a post every day. 10 posts a year is fantastic. Aim for 8 posts a year, aim for 5 posts a year with like 10 as a stretch goal. But like I try to remind myself that gold star years are really 10 posts a year and are very, are much more achievable than what I might sort of think of as being a great blogging year. There is, of course, the interaction between blogs and reality, which is becoming weirder and weirder the more that we have LLMs scraping the internet. And there's a couple of interesting things I think about the slide you have on the screen here. So one thing is, this is a screenshot of like a Google, it's not like a snippet, it's like a Google AI summary. So this is just me. I was like, hey, Google, just in the normal search box, there was an interaction I had. Can you find it? Like I basically just described keywords that were like LLM, Brent Ozar, expert, SQL Server 2025 wrong, Kendra Little or something like that. Like, and it had indexed this stuff from LinkedIn, which is a thing. So it sees a lot now. It's actually accurate on this. This is not hallucinations, but basically Brent has a post where he was talking about SQL Server 2025. And he said, like, it's very clear there's April Fool stuff in this post. Like from reading the post, you would know as a human. But AI picked up some of this stuff. Like I saw a post on LinkedIn by someone who was selling consulting services, SQL Server experts, and they were like, talking about how excited their team was about table level restores being in SQL Server 2025 and how their team could like help you with your SQL Server and their experts are all into this table level restore. And I saw this post and I was like, where did that come from? Like, there's something about this that is familiar. And I looked and I found in Brent's post an exact like reference to this. And then I started doing some testing with various like search terms to see if I could get like the Google AI summary to tell me that table level restores were a feature. And I was able to figure out certain basic prompts. It would tell me that's a feature in SQL Server 2025. When I would go into the go in deeper mode, it would start to say, oh, I didn't say that. Like it would be like denying it and stuff. So this is like an interesting thing about the your blog, your technical posts will be scraped by LLMs, even if you tell them not to. There are some that are going to scrape them, right? So if you're posting stuff that's open, AI is gonna read that stuff. Even like some will respect the rules, some won't. But it will feed back into the thing, imperfections and all, right? And sometimes the AIs are going to be completely wrong about what you said. They will hallucinate about you and attribute it to you, which gets a little weird. I have just kind of accepted this. Like, I am actually okay with my posts being scraped and used by AI. We are all wrong about things. AI is going to be wrong about things. But I do think it's an interesting thing to think about, and you know, maybe use the force for good, not for evil. Although it is very, very funny, sort of attempting to get hacks in to influence models if you have a popular enough site. So, so I think that's kind of an interesting aspect to this. Now, it like there are people out there who are faking resumes. I think there are certainly some folks out there who are not only faking resumes, they're faking blogs. Like this repo I have here with all of these historical posts, right? I could generate a bunch of posts that have metadata from the past. It has never been easier to pretend that I've been blogging for 20 years on a topic, right? You could do various things, remixing other people's, like there's a lot of things you can do if you are trying to create a character and get a job as that character. That is possible. I think there are ways that a lot of us sort of look to validate these things, right? So GitHub code contributions, harder to fake, right? Because they're dated by an external system. Cross links to other blogs from well-known people, also harder to fake. So if you are a blogger on SQL Server topics, one of the things that a lot of people do that I think is a lot of fun, and I often enjoy this, is participate in T-SQL Tuesday. And on T-SQL Tuesday, there's at the end of this, every topic, there's a post that the quote host has that links to all the people who sort of participated in it. That's an example of cross-linking that kind of validates a post because the cross-linking happens at a specific time. It is harder for someone to start 10 blogs that cross-link to one another. It is still doable, but how many of those are actually validated? You start getting into this, the more sock puppets you create, the lower quality they get, right? So although this stuff is fakeable, when it comes to our modern world of who is real and who is not in the career world, this does, I think, still count as kind of validating presence information. It is a major way that people still kind of get to know each other as sort of professionals in an industry. And it is still relevant, even though the technologies that we are working with can sort of pollute these, right? We have, like, AI can do a lot of great things, but it also can pollute a lot of things with just all this extra info, a lot of which is not super high quality, right? So we want to find a way to be genuine, to be as safe as we can, to have a presence that is valid, and a lot of the cross-linking stuff and community participation around the tech blog, I think helps ground that because of this sort of increasing difficulty in telling what and who is real that we are encountering in the world of the modern internet and work. I do work remotely. I've worked remotely for 20 years, so I'm sort of like very used to the interacting with people that I'm not in the same room with model. All right, we're getting kind of closer to the end here and wrapping up. I think my overall thing that I'm starting to think about, I found writing this talk very interesting, just thinking about the concepts. And I think what I've really done myself with my blog has really been a way that I have learned in public over time. And I am more and more appreciating the value of learning in public. At the beginning of writing, and often when I was writing like this, I have a fear of being wrong on the internet, right? Humiliatingly wrong on the internet. It can be a little scary, especially on a topic that you're, like supposedly trying to be smart on, right? Like, what if I'm wrong on the internet? Here are sort of ways that I mitigate being wrong on the internet, right? Because I am learning in public. I am going to be wrong sometimes, right? So thinking about audience, very, very important. Your audience is not the whole internet. You do not have to answer every question. You do not, scope is really important. When I am writing, I am writing for, usually, future Kendra. Kendra is very, very forgetful. My blog started as a place where I wrote down stuff that I kept having to look up, and I wanted a place to keep it that I could find. I still do this all the time. So if there's a page, there are pages on my site that I visit all the time. So I do, so Kendra Little Index Bloat. Kendra Little Index Bloat post I recently wrote about Postgres that just has some very basic commands that I'm like, oh, it's concurrently, right? Like I'll forget the word for online in Postgres sometimes. Or if I want to share this information with someone and I'm talking about this concept, I'll share this post. Another one that I use for SQL Server a lot these days is optimize, replay, failed, Kendra, right? So I will actually write things on my own blog because I often need to run this store to this procedure. Like I'll have a plan forcing fail with a specific error and I'll need to run it with a specific parameter and I can't remember how the words go and I don't have a snippet handy, right? So I started this as shortcuts. For me, it continues to often function that way. But also just someone who's encountering a problem like I'm encountering is my audience, and reminding myself of this audience can kind of help unstick me. I just need to be right enough for that to help that person solving that problem, and giving them pointers on where to learn more is something good that I can do. When I learn that I was wrong about something in a post, I will often go back and put an update at the top of my post and be like, I discovered this thing about this, and I'll just quickly edit it into the top. It's totally fine to be wrong. And in fact, I think it can be very helpful to be wrong on the internet. In terms of writing posts too, I will often try to think of, okay, what type of post is this? And these are kind of the types of posts I think about. A lot of my posts are just how-to. How do I run this query when I hit this error? Like, how do I force the plan with the unforced thing, right? How do I do this? How do I do this? Why posts? Why and how, I don't like, it's hard to mix them together. You will get very, very long content generally. It's often good to separate these. Tech culture, community, social, those can be really, really fun to write. You can do entire blogs that are just like one or two of these categories if you want. I kind of use all of these at different times, just depending on what my mood is. In terms of traffic, tech culture posts can be very, very popular at times, but it's sort of a one-time thing and it's kind of variable. How-to posts, very much bread and butter of things. Why posts, I think, very, very interesting and people like them a lot. This is actual data from my Google Analytics for over the last 90 days. That tech culture, it's one post. So tech culture is the top post there because I wrote a post, bad news DBAs, we are all developers now, that got some discussion, right? And got, sort of views on this for me. Posts like that don't always get big views. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You don't have to care about what gets views either. I think what gets views is kind of interesting, and sometimes it will sort of show the power of a post that I didn't know was particularly important. or that I didn't know was particularly useful. Like it'll basically get linked to from a Stack Overflow answer, or maybe some AI or search result has it in there, and it'll become very, very popular to solve a problem that people hit that I didn't realize that was a common problem. So I don't think about popularity too much when I write posts, unless when I'm writing a tech culture post, I do think about, if this becomes popular, will I regret anything I said in it? That's the one thing I think about with those and I think this is a good question for posts. Will I regret anything I published in this post? Right? You can always take something down, but the internet remembers, right? There's the Wayback Machine. There's that Google summarization that sees what I said on LinkedIn, right? But it is something to think about. So employers will look at things and judge them for discretion. No matter how boring your blog is, I guarantee you, if you blog for long enough, there is someone who will think your post is about them, though. Like, you might be writing about filtered indexes, and someone will see themselves in that post and be like, was that about my PR? You know, and often like this will come up with me, and I'll be like, wait, what? Like, I have no idea what they mean, but it's just a thing that humans do. So understand that people will think that your posts are about them. And a big sort of warning flag for me is if I'm frustrated. If I'm frustrated writing a post, I should not post it. I should not publish it right away. I will let it sit for a while. I will sometimes still publish things that were written in frustration, and you can sometimes tell. So there are posts on my blog where, let's see if my site search still works. Manage distance. So I have written some posts about, I think, it's not looking for that. I need to work on my site search terms and look for tags, because I think this is actually a tag. So some work needs to be done on site search. So if I go to this one and I click on the tag, I can actually get there. So I need some navigation help there. So if you look through the history of my posts on Azure SQL Managed Instance, you will see that I was frustrated in writing some of these posts. I wasn't frustrated at specific people. I wanted to move the needle on the product, right? I wanted Microsoft as an organization to invest more in managed instance. I did not want, and this is a hard thing to kind of try to do as someone outside of Microsoft. I did not want to, like, the problem isn't the people who work on managed instance. The problem is not the engineers. And I tried to make the posts about that. The problem is about strategic investments and in making, like, do we have enough people working on managed instance? Are we investing enough in this? There are real things that need to be fixed. So I was really trying to surface problems that needed attention to just make noise about them, to try to be like a little voice saying, users of this product need key things solved. And you can hear the frustration come through in these posts sometimes. So it is something that I think about and evaluate with posts. Sometimes I will go ahead and publish it, because I do think as technologists, we have feelings and we have emotions, and that's okay. I always try to not make it personal, right? Like, because I want to be like genuine and a good community member, right? That's my purpose with my blog, other than having a place to store stuff I can find that is okay to have in public. But I think, you know, it is something, how I learned it. If I learned it out of frustration, I will kind of be careful about when I actually let that publish, and I think that's worthwhile. I try to cap my time on public work, and when I'm filling out employment contracts. So when you're getting hired with someone and you fill out an employment contract, there is usually, and if there's not, you should ask for it, there's usually a page about intellectual property. If you want to establish and fill out intellectual property you own, you should say in an employment contract, I want a place where I can write, you know, this website or my YouTube channel or whatever. This is my own stuff that I do with my own materials outside of work. This does not belong to the company. You want to just list that on your employment contract. I always try to do that, and I recommend it. I have some older posts that I wrote on the site about kind of contracts and how I think about them. I do think that's worth, whenever you have, you know, like you're GitHub, don't mix your personal GitHub, public GitHub account with work GitHub accounts. I'd like to keep them separate. You want that ownership of that to be kind of clear, just so that it's not even a question about, are those blog posts, are they intellectual property of your company? Just make it simpler and list them is my take on that. So what to do next? Just a couple slides here. Start capturing ideas right away. If you aren't currently blogging or if you haven't started a blog, the hardest thing to do in writing is to think of a good idea like at the time you sit down to write. I have in my GitHub repo that I actually use here, I have an issues section here. This is just a private repo. And I notice the ones of these that are like tagged blog. So I'll just on my phone on the GitHub app, if I have an idea, I will just like throw something in here. And I have a template that I don't even always fill out, right? Like this is just I put a title in. Some of them I will flesh out a bit more. Some of them I'll fill out the template. All depends on how much is in that little crack of time, right? But I'll put my ideas in here and sometimes I'll go over them and groom them. Sometimes I'll kind of rank them of what's easy. Establish a way that's easy for you with the way you work to capture ideas and just start doing it whenever you have an idea. Don't have a quality bar, just write it down, right? Maybe you can't even figure out what it is later. It's fine, just get into the habit of writing it down. That's fine. Embrace beginner content too. Try to remind yourself of like, these 4 concepts is what I do. It's fine to just be restarting your blog, right? This is the anti-hustle approach. We just pick up where we left off. We don't feel bad about it. If we don't have to worry too much about being wrong on the internet. We try to be accurate. We try to be genuine. We try to scope our work, but we're going to sometimes be wrong and we're going to correct it, and that's fine. And I try to remember that my voice in my writing is increasingly the thing that an LLM can't do. It can do a fake voice in writing, but it can't do your voice in writing as you. And that is something that's still uniquely you and that your blog can uniquely have. The rest of my website, like the way I do my website, all of the code on my website now that's not the writing itself is auto-generated. I use LLMs to do that site search, to do like, how do I do this in CSS? How do I make it look okay in mobile? But my writing itself, I like to be my writing because I do think that our writing is one of our most valuable signals at this point. So my next step after this is picking one concrete action. So I'm going to blog about this talk, right? I'm going to pick one concrete action that I'll actually do and keep going. And then I'm going to see if I can write some more posts. And if I find a time that I've stopped and I'm like, I just quit my blogging, and I'm going to pick up and restart, because a blog is a thing that you constantly restart if you are most people who are bloggers. So that is the session today. I managed to talk until 12:52. So do we have 8 minutes left? Is that how much time I left at this point? Do we have comments or thoughts or questions from folks?
Anything from across the chat? Oh, but Deep Jane is her hand raised. So.
Okay. Oh, go for it.
Thank you so much, Kendra. This is an amazing session. I learned a lot from you today on this session. But I have a question. So recently I have written something which is not related technically, but it's about our something related to life. I thought of blogging about. So I did all the writing, and I felt like my English sucks because I'm not a native English speaker. So what I did was like I wrote everything what I wanted to write and copied it and put it in the chat chat GPT, and said that and asked it to rewrite in a proper English format without losing the essence of the writer. So, and then it generated a beautiful post which I can read and I can feel like, okay, these are the exact words that I used while I wrote, but at the same time, it rewrote everything in a proper way that anybody, if an English speaker read my post, they don't feel like this English of this speaker, of this writer sucks, right?
Yeah.
She's an Indian woman talking all of this thing, but the English is not that of a good. So what I wanted to ask is like, is it okay to do that, or like will that be considered like, hey, this blog post is total AI crap, or like how does that come.
It is the perfect question, and this is something that I should have talked about because I think it also touches on accessibility issues and like what about just should everyone have to write fluently and in the same style? Couldn't AI be a kind of equalizer? So there's sort of two different ways that I can look. I'm of two minds about this. So I'm going to kind of present both counterpoints that I think about with this. So one counterpoint I think about of this as someone who is a native English speaker who does not speak a lot of other languages, I find that a lot of people who have English as a secondary language massively underrate their English skills. So, and this is people from many different cultures, right? Like, but sometimes I kind of know, like I have had many people introduce themselves and tell me, I'm sorry for my English is not good. And then I talk to them for a bit and I'm like, your English is amazing. Right. So I think one part of this is there is a self-consciousness about language that is hard to navigate. Are you over or underestimating it? How will it be received? And then also there is an effect that AI language is having on how we write at work. So part of it is gradual and subtle. In my work Slack messages now, I write in Slack all the time, every day. I do not make nearly as many corrections to my Slack messages compared to what I used to do. I used to, in my work messages, make them be sort of polished sentences with proper capitalization and periods. These days, I just leave errant periods in the middle of sentences. Like if I just hit that key, it stays in that message. And I started doing this without realizing it. And part of it, I think, is things that are clearly genuine are now being tacitly as well as explicitly received better than they used to be, right? So how people perceive a typo or a non-correct use of something is changing in the tech world because of LLMs is part of this. And it doesn't negate your point. There's still multiple sides to this. But one part of this is the having a certain amount of error that is like or a certain amount of idiom, a certain amount of grit that is sort of the real life grit of writing is actually these days, and this may shift, but it is actually, I think, appetizing to people in a way now, because you open LinkedIn and you see all of this stuff that looks like marketing material. It's so perfect, right? So the counterpoint to what you're saying is kind of there's actual real benefits to your idiom and your flow. Now, I will go even stronger than what you said, though. On the other side of that is racism is absolutely still real. Sexism is absolutely still real. Biases are still real. Like you are not making this up simply because you're like, oh, occasionally my English isn't perfect. You have probably encountered people making judgments because you don't write English exactly the way they write English, right? So what you're saying is very, very valid. So I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. The answer is figure out what is right for you, and do that. Like and I don't mean to judge that at all. I do think trying to make sure it's still in your voice, very, very important, right? Trying to say, I want to keep this bit in because that kind of is quintessentially me. Very, very valuable. But yes, if there's something that you think makes your post more accessible or represent you better, absolutely do that, in my opinion. But I think that evolution of how imperfection in writing is received is an interesting factor in this. And I hope that we become more accepting of different idioms and different types of conversational patterns, you know what I mean, as we have like, oh, the machines can speak the generic version. But I don't know. I know you have more thoughts after that. I source a lot.
No, that is very valuable information, Kendra. Now I feel like because no matter if you tell the ChatGPT or any other AI tool to not lose the essence, it's still kind of like while I was reading, it's still kind of like this looks too perfect to me.
Yeah.
If I write that post, I might have certain type of, like, there is this the Indian type of language flow in there that I lost it in that chat GPT way of writing things, right?
Yeah.
So even if I tell it to write it without losing essence, I still find some of it is being loose. So now I feel like, how about I try and write completely like the way I used to write the technical blog post. How I might do it my way, like I do it all by myself and see how the views are going on the top of it on that post, and maybe decide by that way. Or like maybe the views doesn't even matter when I try to do it my way, like even if I am doing something wrong, like you mentioned, like do not fear of doing something wrong, right? So yeah.
Yeah. It's you could also approach, so lately I write code review rules for, like today I'm working on rules for an AI agent reviewing PRs, and I'm writing rules for it to critique. I'm writing rules for it to review index stuff. And the way that these rules get fleshed out, actually you might be able to do something similar for blog posts, because these will be rules like in setting up the rules, I'll often have it look at a bunch of our code and PRs and identify patterns. So like I'll have it in a planning phase, identify patterns that we do, I'll critique them, I'll establish rules that I want it to follow for like surfacing things that I want to change, as well as rules for what to ignore. But you could like, and actually now I'm kind of like, I kind of do want to, like, I really do like the idea of agent review of my writing in this feedback cycle. I just don't want it to, like write the whole thing. So I think you could do something interesting with ruling, like that helps you be more specific to it about what you want it to do. But I think it'll be an interesting evolution in kind of testing it to find out what the use case you like is.
Definitely, I'll go ahead and work on those rule stuff. That's really helpful, Kendra.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's a fun thing to think about. The other thing maybe I should do with it that I'm doing with the review rules on the indexing stuff, one of the things I've done with it is actually be like, I just want you to surface the information of overall how this would work. How would the code in this work with the indexes in this? Just like do the legwork for me of telling me what the situation is. A review rule of just, hey, could you tell me what you think the point of this post is? And like, does that match what I think the point of the post is, might be an interesting one too. Just have it surface stuff for you that you can then react to. So
thank you. That's really helpful.
Jen, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, and we're going over. Is that okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I didn't know if you saw Jen's hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to add to your answer to when I was in the MVP program, it came up, it was, I think, somebody in Spain, but the answer was, one of the answers about that type of question about language was, don't be afraid to blog in your own language. Just because so many of us are in English doesn't mean you need to blog in English. If you have enough of an audience in your own language, don't be afraid to use your own language. And maybe there's ways to have both in, I don't know, in the same post necessarily, but I know I'm in Canada, so there's often articles and posts that have English and French in the same post, not necessarily blogs, but articles and things like that. I don't know if that's reasonable to have that is your native language and English. And there's going to be audiences that maybe are looking for stuff in your native language that are just as large as the audience you're trying to maybe reach in North America and other English-speaking parts of the world. Just wanted to throw that out there, as you don't have to always try to make it English.
I think that's a great point. And also, if your career may be in those places, like if you are in Spain and you are likely to work for companies where they may use both English and another language at work, but like blogging in the language, one of the language that's used in the area where you will be seeking work is actually better, I would think. And use of both languages if you need to be bilingual at work, also good, right? So I think it could even be beneficial writing in other languages when you're fluent with them for those reasons. I do like that idea of auto translating posts to be interesting, because that's like just an interesting exercise. But of course, people can kind of do it on their own now too. But yeah, that's a great point.
Judy?
Yeah, so I really liked how you have like your breakdown of looking at what types of posts are popular with readers. I'm primarily interested in like the, LinkedIn traffic. But there's a lot of, benefit from having like your own page.
Mhm.
And so how do you work with that? Like I want to get like the the views on my LinkedIn profile and all the LinkedIn activity from like posting something as a LinkedIn article, but then I might miss out on some of the analytics that you would get from having like, a just like your own website.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's shades of this question too. Do you post things on your own site or on a third-party site, and then how many third-party sites? For instance, like some folks do Substacks, right? And post information on, Substack, which third party. Now, I think you still probably own I haven't looked into the terms of use for Substack. I think you probably still kind of own the intellectual property, but like they may put ads on the context around it changes, the views around it change, and then you're kind of dependent on the third party as well. I mean, one thing I would say is, especially when you're first getting started, just do what's easy, right? If it's easy and makes sense for you to just start with LinkedIn, just start with LinkedIn. Like if that just seems like this is what am I most likely to actually do?
Okay.
Definitely the winner at first. Longer term, I think that setting up your own site with your own URL, it can be done very, very cheaply. And it's never been easier to do if you are willing to use AI, especially. And that can be very, very valuable, and I think is great to have over time, to have that presence that also has content there in parallel. I think it's typical, like you just never know what's going to happen with LinkedIn in the future.
Yeah.
But for the getting started, just getting into a rhythm, getting in a habit, do what's easy. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good very much in this situation, So yeah, sometimes I'm just like, I just feel like doing this as a LinkedIn article. It's fast, easy. I'm just going to do it that way. And that's fine. So
okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, I think we may be wrapping up. I still have no idea where the chat is in Teams.
I'm not sure it's always visible for the presenter
Chat
nowadays.
doesn't really work in Teams anymore unless everybody's in the community because of the way Microsoft has it set up. So that's why we just let people open up the mics when it's time.
Great.
Yeah, it's weird how they got it set up. You have to be part of the Microsoft community thingy in order for chat to be visible.
Logged in as that Microsoft.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just
I didn't log in.
logged in as that person.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you're part of the Microsoft community.
Oh yeah. I just did the web browser on this one and didn't sign in.
Yeah.
That's why.
It's where it used to work and then they did something and it doesn't anymore for external people.
Yeah. I'm guessing there was probably a spam trolling problem, and so
yeah.
One can imagine the circumstances.
But they have the mic and videos open by default, which seems worse.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I shut it down each time. So I have a quick question for you, Kendra. So a while back ago, I was getting irritated by like the AI generated blogs that were, just factually incorrect, and you could tell the person it wasn't I'm changing this to purify it or anything. It was just something that they generated from online. And I was getting annoyed because I was hitting a bunch of those, right? When I go looking for technical information. So I thought, well, I blog. How do I let people know that I'm not doing this? And so there's a whole website that gives you icons that says not generated by a human, not by AI. But now, as it's becoming more and more common, I think for use it for good in blog posting, right? And not just for the things that I was hitting, 6 months ago, 8 months ago. is that still kind of a valid thing you would suggest, like putting that? Because I think there's definitely AI has great things to prettify or however you want to change it without, like Deepta was saying, without losing that essence. And I think that's super important. I still want people to hear my voice. But maybe I don't want to spend an hour formatting a certain way or something, which I'm prone to do. So would you suggest, like, hey, don't even worry about that, just make a note or remove it altogether, it doesn't matter anymore, or like what would you suggest along those lines?
Yeah, that's an interesting question as usage and sort of, there are definitely folks out there who really, really want to avoid AI. Like, right, there's definitely perspective of opinions out there, and there's a strong group of folks who are like, this stuff is garbage, right? And then there's, we've got the whole spectrum there. I think this is really at a follow your heart place right now. I don't know that there is a winning answer on this. I just try to kind of be basically clear about what I'm doing, and your reader will make their own decision, right? Like, at a certain point, do what makes you happy with your craft and your content. And, if people don't like it, they'll go somewhere else, is really how I kind of think about it at the end of the day. I never want to write CSS again, right? Like, that is something I hate doing. I will embrace anything that will write CSS for me. That's, kind of it's where do you set that boundary, basically. And my boundary has shifted a little bit over time, right? Like, now I am actually more conservative about my writing than I was at the beginning, I think. So yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's a great question. And I think it's okay for your answer to it to change over time too, as this like roller coaster we're on evolves.
Thank you. And Deepta, it's from what you said earlier, I did want to call out, like, I actually love hearing people's voices in their thing. I think my brand of neurodiversity, it helps me to be able to read it better when I hear people's own voices rather than something overly AI. Not that you use overly AI, but just as a thing. Like, don't worry. I personally, I wouldn't worry about the English part for you, because I like to hear the Deepsa isms in there that I think are going to be pretty unique, that may not even translate. And then my brain doesn't get like stuck on the like, oh, this is the same like term. Somebody started using the word operationalize in our meetings lately because it's so often used by AI and nobody actually says those terms typically. So you want to so when I hit things like that, then I stop engaging reading wise and processing. So I think that's where some of my personal thing goes. But definitely we want to hear the different voices, even when my English is horrible and I'm not a native English speaker. So.
And I think if you're mainly worried about grammar, just use Word to type it in there. It'll correct most grammar. And you don't have to worry about everything else. And then you're still, you get the grammar stuff taken care of, and then you're, taking care of, sticking to the words you want to use.
That's an interesting point that for some things we have classic. Mode.
It'll take care of the little grammar stuff. It'll highlight most of the grammar stuff, and then you're keeping to your words. Not that there's anything wrong with using AI to help some of it, but if you're really worried about just grammar itself, you can use something like that.
Yeah, I get stuck on that too much. Like, I think blog posts don't get completed because I'm so worried about my grammar, which